Now, 2 months after a deadly plane crash in China, the United States has now reported that the crash was caused deliberately by someone who was present in the cockpit. This comes after a thorough analysis of the black box data from the China Eastern Airlines jet. US media cited preliminary assessment by officials who analyzed both black boxes at a government lab in Washington, D.C. The officials are directing their attention now to the pilot. However, it is very likely that an outsider breached the cockpit to cause the crash. Black box data suggests that the plane took a nosedive after someone pushed the controls. The preliminary data investigation did not find any indication of a technical malfunction. Now, this has prompted the officials to also investigate the actions of the crew members. And if the claims made in these reports are confirmed, now that would help Boeing greatly. The company has faced severe criticism for its safety practices and after software flaws caused 2 crashes which killed 346 people. Boeing and China Eastern did not comment on this latest report. The Boeing crashed during a trip from Kunming, Guangzhou in March this year. The incident killed 123 passengers, 9 crew members, total reported death toll of 132 people. And for more on this, we're now being joined by our correspondent Richard Kimber from Hong Kong. Richard, thank you for joining us. Some startling details, like I mentioned, there have come to light. What can you tell us about the latest report on this crash?
That's right, as you say, these are reports in the Wall Street Journal newspaper out of the US, which is suggesting that initial US investigations think that this was a deliberate act. They're not yet clear on whether or not it was indeed the pilots themselves, or as you say, that somebody else on board may have broken into the cockpit and been responsible. But it was always a suspicion with regards to the way that this plane fell out of the air. If you remember, the trajectory of the plane was extremely unusual. It took a very sharp nosedive before crashing into the ground in a way that has been rarely seen in any other plane accident that has not had some external force causing it, whether it's been a terrorist act or some deliberate act on the part of a pilot. Now, there's been no response from US or Chinese aviation regulators towards this report so far. There have, of course, been from Chinese regulators in previous weeks a firm affirmation of the qualifications and the suitability of the pilots who are flying the China Eastern Airline. One of the pilots was, in fact, one of China's most experienced pilots in its entire nationwide fleet, and so it was quick to try and dispel any suggestion that its own pilots may have been responsible for this at the time. But this report is also again now casting doubt on whether or not the pilots may have somehow been involved.
Richard, another point here now, that if these claims made in the reports, they are confirmed, now that would be a help to Boeing. Now, what has been the response to this?
Well, certainly that would be a huge help for the business platform of Boeing, and particularly in China, because China is one of Boeing's largest customers, and China was one of the first major airline economies to stop offering permits for the Boeing 737 MAX airline to fly, the aircraft, I beg your pardon, to fly, after its 2 fatal crashes around 3 years ago. And it immediately grounded the 737-800 jet that was at the centre of this crash in China after this fatal crash as well. And that really put a hammer in Boeing's operations in China, because China flies more of those 737-800 jets than any other country in the world. Boeing's shares jumped immediately on reports of this Wall Street Journal newspaper article, but there's still a great deal of uncertainty, because despite Boeing saying there was nothing wrong with the plane, until there's affirmation from the US regulators themselves, rather than simply this media report and perhaps corroboration from Chinese aviation regulators that in fact there were no mechanical faults and it was indeed some kind of pilot or cockpit activity that caused this crash, it won't necessarily be all clear for Boeing when it comes to operating in China. But it's a hugely important market for Boeing, and so this initial report suggesting that it may not have been any mechanical failure at all is a massive step forward for its hopes to continue expanding in what is such a massive economy for its continued growth.
That is right. Now, Richard, thank you so much for bringing us all the updates on this. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.